America's team, crap, crumbling at the seams. We're talking about the ceiling falling apart.
Well, good morning, good people. Mark Holmes here. Of course, my buddy Cowboy Joe Boo, as well as the Funky Chicken in flight coming into Reagan National Airport. Ended up crashing into a Army Black Hawk on a training mission where there are no survivors. It is solely a recovery mission. And having flown out of Reagan National Airport more times than I could ever count, and remembering how it was with the Air Florida flight in 1982, I know how bad this is, and my thoughts and prayers definitely go to all the people involved in this tragedy. It's beyond imaginable. To have seen that last night, I was literally finished my fireside chat, and I'm sitting down uploading, and I see the early reports of it and seeing the shots of the plane and hitting. It's just unbelievable. It's surreal. And to find out that parts of the United States figure skating community were on the board too, definitely brings it home. When we hear about tragedies like this, we just think of, it's the numbers. But we forget that there are people that are involved, that are families. And there's some heart-wrenching messages from people that were waiting at the airport, or friends and family and stuff. And it's sad all the way around. So there's where we are with that. So it seems like when you have times like this, it's like talking about the Cowboys in sports seems kind of doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of life. But sports sometimes is a great way to take your mind off things. And the Cowboys, I don't know if it's great to have that to be what takes you off of what's going on in the world or not, but the Cowboys are definitely always in the news. And I want to start this because I actually feel, maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm trying to buy in, maybe I'm trying to have hope where there really shouldn't be. The Cowboys have made more mistakes, and their arrogance has gotten in the way too many times over the last 30 years since firing Jimmy Johnson. We all know this. But I feel like maybe there's some changes happening, that maybe retrospectively that they're looking inside a little more and taking responsibility for some of their problems. And I'm going to say, I think they're actually building a really good coaching staff. And if for no other reason, the relationship that you're hearing with Brian Schottenheimer with the players on the field. You know, you see Dak and Schoonmaker and things showing up for the press conference. And I swear, I look at Dak Prescott, he looks almost teary-eyed watching Brian Schottenheimer become the head coach. And shout out to Mike Fisher, because Mike Fisher, of course, nobody's been doing it longer than Mike Fisher and things. And he's a journalist, you know. I'm a YouTuber, you know. Great article I'm reading today from Overshown, and his thoughts on Brian Schottenheimer. And I just want to read a little bit of it from you. Jerry and Stephen Jones at least presented that case to Schottenheimer's introductory press conference Monday. However, the opinions of players will correlate more directly to how well this move lands. Fortunately for all sides, it seems not to be an issue. Quarterback Dak Prescott voiced his support for Schottenheimer earlier this week, alleviating at least some concern, giving Prescott's willing to be able to working closely with his head coach on a day-to-day basis. But what about the feelings of the less heralded faces of the franchise, or those not expected to deliver a politician's response to the big picture question? While DeMarvis Overshown had an outstanding campaign for the first time he was on the field this season, he still fits the mold of the average player around the star. Nevertheless, the linebacker shares a 4-word evaluation of the new head coach. he's always the coach you can go and get some type of motivation. When you get a guy on a team is going to play hard for, all 11 on the field are going to play hard every single snap for him. Then you've got your coach. I feel that's what we got in Shotty, he said. Football is his passion. I can just see in his face how badly he wants it. When a coach shows me that side of him, it makes me want to go out there and give 100% every play. Football is passion. That is a great place to start. Football is passion. That's true. That's very true. And to hear a defensive player say that about the coach. Because, see, it's one thing for Dak, who worked every day, every game with Brian Schottenheimer. Defensive side, you don't necessarily get that much of it. Now, as far as the coaching, you can see before our eyes, Mike McCarthy loves to sling the rock. Mike McCarthy definitely loves to pass the football. In football, running the football, meh, not really caring about, not feeling it. But with Brian Schottenheimer, they interviewed Cardinals offensive line coach Caton Adams for offensive coordinator, and again, per Mike Fisher, he's a shoo-in to become the offensive coordinator. And a little bit about him is Adam is considered a top candidate for the job and was a key architect in Arizona's top 10 running game this year from my 23 list. Now, that was Connor Orr. Adams 40 is highly recommended by offensive NFL coach. He was a walk-on at Boise State before getting into coaching. He broke in the NFL in 2019 as the offensive line assistant on Frank Wright's coaching staff. This is where you start to look at the Cowboys are evolving. They're getting away from the older guys, the Bone Fossils, the Mike Zimmers, the Mike McCarthys, the old guard, the old way of doing things. And we've heard so many times this year that the Cowboys offense wasn't creative. It was antiquated. Well, now you're beginning to get some guys like Matt Eberflus, and bringing in White Cotton, who is a really good defensive line coach. The philosophy seems to be, at least, we don't know what they're going to put as far as the players go. But you start looking at the Cowboys evolving to be more balanced and run-centric. We've heard Brian Schottenheimer basically saying the passing game and the running game go hand in hand, especially with play action. And understanding that you have to be able to show you have to show basically the same thing, but doing different things to help confuse the defense. Defensive players are so fast now that you get chased down real quick. You've got to find an advantage. And if you just think that you can just line up and that my guy is just better than you one-on-one, that works some of the time, but not when you start playing elite talent. And so I'm really digging the staff that they're putting together. The fact that the players seem to be on board with it is a great thing. And now the bigger question will be is, what will the Cowboys do as far as plugging the holes with the players? We kind of got a little bit of Stephen Jones wish-wash, and I will say Stephen Jones does not bullshit you. He's going to tell you flat out, we're not going to do shit if we're not going to do shit. But we've gotten, at least we're looking at it more. It's possible. When Mike Fisher pressed him about, you can flip triggers, and it's like, yeah, you can do some of that, but, he's still hesitating, or at least leaving plausible deniability. But it seems like things are moving in the other direction. Now, again, I'm getting sucked into hope with the Cowboys. I don't know if it's going to be there or not. But with the exception of the process to get to Brian Schottenheimer, you have to start thinking that they're doing some good things. You know, there's talk that they're going to try and re-sign Osa Ndigazua, which I think is definitely something that will help to appease Micah Parsons. It seems like you're getting the right type of coaches here, that the emphasis is on running the football and possibly being better in the front seven. And, of course, right now, what we got going on, and this is where all the talking heads and the brass and everything else are working right now, is at the Senior Bowl. This is the opportunity that you get to see the players up close, you know, for this week while they're practicing. You're seeing them doing drills and stuff. This is kind of like the prelim before the combine. And this gives your new coaching staff a chance to start looking at these guys. And I'm happy that they're getting it together now as opposed to being like New Orleans right now that hasn't hired a head coach. Let's go through and check out the day one, which was yesterday, some of the notes and stuff from the Senior Bowl.
Hancock Whitney Stadium here in Mobile, Alabama. Day number one of the Reese's Senior Bowl is in the books. Tommy Yarsh of DallasCowboys.com. I'm Kyle Yeomans.
What's up,
wrapping
Kyle?
up the first day that was. And they have the motto of the draft starts in Mobile. They've gone behind that for years to come, and it certainly feels that way because today got a chance to talk to some of the prospects, started our day early at the Mobile Convention Center before walking out here and seeing both the national practice in the morning and then working into the American practice in the afternoon. Let's start with the national practice. Tommy, as we wrap up the day, what were your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I thought a couple guys stood out to me. Ariante Ursare, the tackle from Minnesota. He's a guy that we've covered a little bit on the draft show here in the early goings. I thought he looked really strong. That's what his thing is, the strength, like being able to push guys in front of him and keep guys out of the backfield. I thought he did a really good job of that. I know there's still some concerns about his feet and his footwork, so we'll keep a closer eye on that tomorrow, but I thought he looked very strong today. Jeffrey Bassa, the linebacker from Oregon, incredible closing speed for a linebacker. You and I were talking while he was playing, and it looked at points like he was playing corner from the linebacker spot. So that's another guy who really stood out to me. And then up front of the defensive line, Anais Peebles, Virginia Tech, just wrecking shop in the run game. This guy's known more as a pass rushing, three technique kind of defensive lineman, but the first two reps that we saw of him, he just throws guys off him left and right to get into the backfield and blow up the run play when we saw the 11-on-11 period towards the end of practice. So those three, for me, definitely stood out. And then one guy, additionally, an honorable mention, if you will, a guy that we talked to, and you'll see on the draft show, Mike Greed from Marshall, the edge rusher. Up and down day, I think, but he had some really good reps, and he looks the part, Kyle.
I wrote on my notebook that his twitch is better in person, and he had plenty of that on tape during his time in the Sun Belt, winning a Sun Belt Conference title with the Marshall Thundering Herd. Comes out here against better competition. We asked him about that today. What is the benefit of doing an event like this? He said, I get to put tape on film against the best of the best. That's really the general theme amongst some of these guys. Mike Green was certainly one of those. Another one that we were excited out of the hills of West Virginia, Wyatt Milam from the Mountaineers of West Virginia up in Morgantown, had a great season playing multiple positions on the offensive line. Today he was fantastic in one-on-one drills, kept his hands steady, kept the punch heavy, the light feet along the way, as you like to see from those big offensive linemen. He was in control almost all the way throughout his reps. Two of the draft show pet cats, Mike Green, Wyatt Milam, out of the hills of West Virginia, almost heaven, having that same sort of success down here in Alabama. One more guy I want to bring up out of that first practice was another guy we talked to on the draft show, Ollie Gordon, running back from Oklahoma State. It's tough to evaluate running backs at this point in time because there's no hitting, there's no real thud up, there's just a couple of touches and then you're off to the races. Speed-wise, looks great. Really the entirety of his body of work, including his size. He measured in grade 230 pounds.
Damn.
He's really dwarfing all the other guys around him at the running back position. Was impressed with the way he moved.
That's a Derrick Henry size guy.
Comparison. And then one more guy to look at, too. Iowa State had a couple of wide receivers out here. Jalen Knoll was fantastic, though. Higgins was a guy.
Are you getting excited yet?
I thought was going to steal the show from the Cyclones. No, it was Jalen Knoll. He had a great catch on the sideline, twisting back to the inside of the 5-yard line, made a grab with both feet in bounds. Of course, we're trying to make plays on Sundays, so he got both feet down. moving into the American practice in the afternoon, we had an opportunity to catch up with Will McClay midway through practice. We'll post that on DallasCowboys.com as well. But what did you see once you got a chance to get through the Will McClay stories and then see what happened on the field?
Yeah, a couple of edge rushers really stood out to me in there from the Lone Star Showdown rivalry from Texas and Texas A&M. We'll start with Texas A&M edge Shamar Stewart. He had the rep of the day. He got oohs and ahs from everybody in this crowd, myself and Kyle included, on a bull rush against, I think it was a Kansas tackle.
Yeah,
I'm blanking on the name right now, but just straight back, lifts him off the ground with that, I think it was his left arm, and just pile drives him into the quarterback. Just a fantastic rep. And he's a guy that we talked about coming in here as someone to keep an eye on. These Texas A&M edge rushers, Nick Scoured and then Shamar Turner in the middle of that defensive line. So the Aggies with some really good defenders. I know Turner and Scoured aren't participating, but their counterpart, Shamar Stewart, was fantastic today. And on the other side, Barron Sorrell, another edge rusher who I wasn't as sure about, even after watching him for 3 years at Texas coming in. I thought he was a little bit undersized, but he measured in really well, and he played very well against these opposing offensive tackles. I thought he was a little bit better of a run blocker and a run defender during his time at Texas. Today he got after the passer a little bit well.
We'll go ahead and end that there. So definitely check out
Texas and Texas A&M respectively.
Both guys
with Kyle Yeomans. Right now, this is you may think it's the off season, but there's really no off season in the NFL. There really isn't. It's really I can say Stephen Jones is correct when he says player acquisition is a 365-day-a-year job, which is true. The only problem is that Stephen Jones isn't actually doing that 365 days a year. And this is the time that you figure out what your identity is going to be. What is the team that we're going to be? Are we going to be, do we need to have 4 wide receivers and say the hell with the running game, or are we trying to be balanced? Are we looking to get tight ends that are good run blockers to be in here, or, so on? So this is critical. I will say critical between now and the draft, because you've got to figure out what free agents we have that we want to hold on to. What guys do we deem must have? Then we have to look at it from the standpoint of we need to get in free agency and try and plug up some of these holes. If you can really plug these holes up with hopefully guys that are better than just saying, that's a hole, he plugged the hole, where we can improve in positions, that's even better. But unfortunately, that's going to cost money that Stephen Jones doesn't want to spend. Then you can go to the draft in a position of power and look and say, who can I get that will make an impact for this team, as opposed to I got to fill a need because I got nobody there and I got to plug them in and hope that they can play like a veteran. That's loser philosophy. We need to find some impact players that will instantly make us better in the draft, as opposed to just plugging holes with best available. Alrighty, good people, as always, we got to get out of here. We got to get out of here. And actually, we're not going to do that one. We're definitely not. With the plane crash, we're not going to do that one. We'll end it with this.
Morning that involved a lot of very successful people, one of them being Jerry Jones.
Oh, yeah.
Jerry Jones speaking about his Dallas Cowboys in an interview with Peter King is fantastic. To Jones, there's no such thing as bad coverage of the Cowboys. Bad coverage makes the Cowboys human. And he is positive his fan base loves the human.
Okay. Good to know. Yeah.
My fan base loves the human that makes us human, and the human that makes us human is the Cowboys and the way we operate. Let me tell you a story, Jones says. To Peter King, warming to this topic, a few years after I bought the team, I'm out in Los Angeles, La La Land, my hometown, having lunch with David Hill. You know David Hill. David Hill, one of Murdoch boys, Australia, man.
Okay.
And Ed Gorin. Okay, Ed Gorin, not Australian, actually from Carolina, I do believe, but pretty important, big swinging Packers at Fox Sports. At that time, there were a lot of negative headlines about the Cowboys. Michael Irvin was in the headlines. People were saying the owner's an outlaw. And so that day I told him, listen, I'm going to fucking tighten up the lid on this franchise. We're going to get control of this team. And David Hill, Australian man, one of the heads of Fox Sports, he jumped up and he said,
No! Do not touch my boys. They're television gold. Don't even fucking think about it. The foibles, the soap opera, the issues, they create interest. Yet in the Senior Bowl, I can't see what's next, but free agency, the draft, training camp, we always got something going on. People follow us year in, year out. Owner every year, every now and then gets it in the paper. It just adds to the interest. All of it. People love the Cowboys.
Well, you're goddamn right, then. I'm going to force the Cowboys down everybody's throat forever. And that was the moment that the fucking Dallas Cowboys were on primetime television every single weekend. David Hill, Australian man, pretty high up, I believe, in the Murdoch world. Murdoch owns the Fox thing and is also the person being represented basically in Succession.
Yes.
Which adds even more intrigue to the entire conversation. This might be Tom Wambsgate.
Yeah, it's going to be Wambsgate.
But David Hill told Jerry Jones, like, no. You need to have the eyes of a network or the eyes of a business whenever you're looking at the Cowboys, because they're chatted about in every single regard. There was actually a rule that we were told by one of the heads of TV. And I'm just going to say heads of TV because this is one of the people that just created modern sports television.
Yeah.
All right, here you go. You get your topics that you think are big on the day. Then you go ahead and you hit LeBron James. Then you go ahead and hit the Cowboys. Then you go ahead and wrap it up with Tim Tebow. And then, boom, we're back at the top with all the stories. And then guess who's back? Go ahead and hit LeBron James. Go ahead and hit the Cowboys. Tebow's got anything, fucking hit Tebow. And then bang, guess what? You're back at the top. The only average watch time or listen time is 12 minutes. You're able to get everybody. If you have a 2-hour show, guess what? You actually have 8 shows because you have 8 15-minute shows. You have a 3-hour show, you have 12 shows. Look at what you're doing. This is just basically what it is. You do this, the daily hot topics. By the way, if LeBron or the Cowboys or Tim Tebow are a part of the headlines of the day, oh boy. This is a good day.
Yeah.
This is a good day. The Cowboys basically became that in every